12 years. That's how long it had been since I heard her voice. But the moment I saw her name flash on my phone screen, everything came rushing back. My name is Elena Blake, and this is not the kind of story you read in books. No, this is the kind of story that leaves a mark. A quiet one, like a scar under your skin that no one sees, but always itches when the weather changes. I was 18 when my mother, Linda, looked me dead in the eyes and said I was a mistake. Not in anger, not even in tears, just cold, calculated, as if she were reading a grocery list and I was the item she'd been meaning to throw out for years. That day, she packed my bags, gave me $100 bill, and told me to leave. I remember the smell of that moment. Rain on concrete, my cheap body spray mixed with the sour scent of disappointment in the air, hers and mine. She didn't cry, she didn't yell, she just shut the door, and for 12 years, she stayed behind it. No birthdays, no Christmas calls, no I'm proud of yous, just silence. And then, 12 years later, out of nowhere, she called. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity? It's a wicked thing. Her voice sounded older, shakier. She called me by a nickname I hadn't heard in over a decade. Ellie, I need to talk to you. She needed help, but I'm not the girl she threw away at 18. Not anymore. So the question is, what do you do when the person who once abandoned you comes crawling back? Would you open the door? Comment below, would you answer her call? Or would you let her feel exactly what she made you feel? And don't forget to subscribe, because you won't believe how this story ends. I used to think the worst kind of pain was loud. Screaming, breaking plates, doors slamming kind of pain. But the kind I grew up with was different. It was quiet, measured, civilized even. But make no mistake, it cut just as deep. My name is Elena Blake, and my mother taught me what it meant to be unwanted, without ever having to say the words out loud. She was a master at emotional distance. Elegant, well-spoken, always in control. People in town admired her. To them, she was Linda, the poised single mother who raised a daughter on her own and still managed to look flawless doing it. They didn't know that under all that polish. She barely looked at me like I was a person. Our house in Oregon was clean. Too clean. Pristine. Like a model home someone forgot to actually live in. I remember the lemony smell of her wood polish every Saturday morning. That scent is burned into my memory like a brand. Sometimes, when I smell it now, I feel like I'm 16 again, standing perfectly still in the hallway so I wouldn't wrinkle the carpet or breathe too loud. I spent most of my life trying to earn her affection. I got good grades. I won spelling bees. I never missed a curfew. I even volunteered at the local shelter because I thought maybe if I showed her I had a good heart, she might finally let me see hers. But there was always this distance between us. Like I was a house guest she didn't quite know what to do with. She never hit me, never screamed at me. But there's more than one way to hurt someone. Sometimes silence can echo louder than any slap. It was in the little things. Like how she always introduced me as my daughter Elena to her friends, but never once called me sweetheart or baby or even Elle. Like how she'd come to my school events but never looked up from her phone. Or how she'd buy me clothes that didn't fit and then say, well, maybe if you didn't have such broad shoulders. And still, I kept trying. Around the time I turned 17, something shifted. I started noticing new things, colder things. She began locking her office door at home. Her phone was always face down. She stopped leaving dinner out for me when she worked late. One day, I came home from school, and the framed photo of us that used to sit in the living room was gone. It was the only picture of us where she was even half smiling. I asked her where it was, and she just shrugged. It didn't fit the decor anymore, she said. Neither did I. I started to feel it more and more. This sensation that I was being slowly, methodically erased. Then came the night I found her at the kitchen table, sipping tea and reading a real estate brochure. A sleek, modern condo, downtown, 1 bedroom, no mention of me, no spare room, no, we'll downsize together. Just a new life, one that clearly didn't include her daughter. I stood there, silently watching her flip through floor plans like she was choosing a new dress. She looked up and smiled. Not warmly, just politely, like I was a neighbor who'd walked into the wrong house. That was the moment it hit me. She wasn't planning to leave me. She was planning for me to leave her. At first, I thought maybe I was overreacting. I even Googled empty nest syndrome like a fool, hoping there was some explanation that didn't involve her actively discarding me. But the signs kept coming. One morning, I overheard a phone call. She was speaking quietly, but I caught the words starting fresh and finally alone. My stomach turned. And then she started talking about transitioning me into independence. Those were her exact words. Like I was a project that needed to be completed. She gave me a pamphlet for a student housing program and said, "You should start thinking about life after high school." I was 18 in 3 months. Most parents start shopping for dorm bedding or planning graduation dinners. Mine was slowly edging me toward the door like a bad tenant whose lease was about to expire. And the thing is, I still wasn't ready to believe it. Not completely, because deep down, I was still that little girl hoping she'd get it right. Hoping maybe, just maybe, she was just scared, or tired, or going through something she didn't know how to say. But I was wrong. I didn't know it yet, but she had already decided my expiration date. She just hadn't told me. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't come with a dramatic reveal. No secret lover. No caught-in-the-act moment. Sometimes betrayal is a quiet, calculated decision someone makes while you're still in the room, smiling. That was my mother. About 2 weeks after I saw the condo brochure, she sat me down in the kitchen. She had her professional voice on, the one she used at church or when talking to her boss on the phone. I could tell immediately it wasn't going to be a warm conversation. She slid an envelope across the table like it was a formal document. Inside was a bus ticket. One way. Departure, June 5th. Destination, Seattle. My 18th birthday was June 2nd. Happy graduation, she said. I stared at her, confused. What is this? A fresh start, she replied, like she was offering me a spa day and not exile. My heart started racing. You're sending me away? She took a sip of her coffee. Calm, precise. Elena, you're about to be an adult. It's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. I've arranged housing through a program. You'll have a place to stay for 6 months. After that, you'll need to support yourself. Support myself? I had a part-time job at a bookstore and maybe $300 in savings. I hadn't even received my college acceptance yet. I wasn't prepared. Not for this. Not alone. I remember my throat tightening, but I refused to cry. I just kept staring at her, trying to find some trace of softness, some sign that this wasn't really happening, that she'd get up, hug me, say she was sorry for the way she said it, that she loved me, even if she didn't know how to show it. But there was nothing, just that same distant stare. You always said you wanted to be independent, she added. No, I wanted to be loved. I wanted to feel like I mattered, but I guess she had a different interpretation of want. Still numb, I asked, "Can I at least stay until I start school?" She shook her head gently, as if the decision was already out of her hands. I need this time for myself. This is what's best for both of us. Best for both of us? No, this was what was best for her. I was just in the way. It hit me all at once. This wasn't some hard parenting decision made from love. This wasn't a tough love moment. This was a clean break. She wanted her life back, and I was the stain she'd been dying to scrub out. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I walked past her room and heard her laughing on the phone. Laughing, just hours after exiling her only child. And that's when I knew. She hadn't made this decision lightly. She'd planned it, probably for months, maybe longer. Every quiet dismissal, every withdrawn glance, every time she forgot to ask how my day was. Those weren't slips. They were steps. Steps toward cutting me out completely. I stood outside her door for what felt like hours, just standing there in the dark, heart pounding, palms sweaty, listening to her sound so free of me. That night, something broke inside me, not loudly, not all at once, but piece by piece. That was the first time I stopped seeing her as my mother and started seeing her for what she truly was, a woman who had no space in her life for the daughter she created. The next morning, I packed my things in silence. She didn't help. She didn't even come to the door when I left. No tears, no hug, just the hiss of the bus doors closing behind me. I wish I could say I left that house with my head held high, that I walked away empowered, with fire in my veins and a plan in my pocket. But I didn't. I left numb, in shock, with a bus ticket, a small duffel bag, and a hollow space in my chest where a mother's love was supposed to be. When I arrived in Seattle, the sky was gray and wet, just like the day I left. I remember thinking the universe must be in on the joke. I stepped off the bus into drizzle, dragging my bag behind me, trying not to cry. I didn't want to look weak, not even in front of strangers. The housing program she arranged wasn't awful, but it felt cold in a different way. I was placed in a shared apartment with 3 other girls, all around my age, all trying to outrun their own stories. We didn't talk much. We were like ghosts in separate corners of a broken house. My room had a thin mattress on a creaky metal frame, a single dresser, and a cracked mirror on the back of the door. The window looked out at an alley. It always smelled faintly of fried food and rain. I sat on the bed that first night and just stared at the wall, for hours. No tears, just silence. I kept thinking, she really did it. She actually let me go. That sentence haunted me, not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. I kept expecting her to call, to check in, to regret it, but she didn't. Days passed, then weeks. Nothing. I ate instant noodles for dinner, skipped breakfast most days, walked to my classes because I couldn't afford the bus fare. My part-time job at a bookstore barely covered rent, let alone food or clothes. I wore the same pair of jeans until the seams started to fray. There were nights I lay awake, curled in a ball, heart pounding, wondering what I did to deserve this. I wasn't perfect, but I tried. I was respectful. I studied. I helped around the house. I never drank, never partied, never made trouble. So why was I the one discarded? The loneliness hit hardest in the quiet moments. Mornings when I woke up and forgot, for just a second, that I wasn't home. Nights when I wanted to call someone, just to hear a familiar voice, and realized there was no one to call. Not her. Not anyone. One afternoon, I sat in a tiny park near the university. It was chilly, but sunny. I watched a mother chasing her toddler across the grass, both of them laughing. The little girl tripped, and the mother scooped her up without missing a beat, held her close, kissed her forehead, whispered something that made the child smile again. And I felt it, that ache deep in my chest, that yearning for something I never had. She never held me like that, never kissed my forehead like I was someone to be cherished. At that moment, I realized something that shattered me more than anything else. I wasn't grieving a person. I was grieving a fantasy. The idea of a mother who loved me, who wanted me, who saw me. And that fantasy? It was dead. A few months later, I was stocking shelves at the bookstore when I saw her. My mother, outside. She was walking past the window, arm in arm with a man I didn't recognize. She looked radiant. Perfect coat, hair done, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. I dropped the book I was holding. I felt like I couldn't breathe. She didn't look in. She didn't even pause. She had no idea I was right there. And that's when the pain turned into something else. Not just hurt. Not just sadness. It was fury. Not loud, screaming fury, but a deep, quiet fire that started burning under my skin. She had moved on without a second thought. Meanwhile, I was barely surviving, working 2 jobs, skipping meals, dragging myself through life like I was wearing someone else's heavy coat. That was the moment I stopped making excuses for her, stopped trying to understand her pain, stopped justifying her coldness. I didn't know what my future looked like yet, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I was done begging for love, done chasing closure. She made her choice. Now it was my turn to make mine. I didn't have a master plan. Not at first. After the moment I saw her through the window, living her best life, while I stood behind a cash register surviving on stale coffee and microwaved noodles, I knew something had to change. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I needed to save myself from becoming her. I realized I'd spent my whole life reacting to what she did to me. I was done with that. I didn't want to be someone trying to prove her wrong. I wanted to become someone so whole, so grounded, so completely self-made, that her rejection would feel irrelevant. That was the beginning of my plan. The first thing I did was leave the bookstore job. It was safe, but it wasn't helping me grow. I took a job cleaning offices overnight. It paid more, even if it left me exhausted during the day. I used that extra money to enroll in more college courses. I chose business administration. I didn't fully know why at the time. Maybe it was instinct. But deep down, I think I wanted to understand structure, power, leverage. I wanted to know how the world worked and how to stop being powerless in it. My days were brutal. Classes in the morning, tutoring other students in the afternoon, cleaning offices at night. I slept 4 hours most nights. I ate whatever I could afford, but I was moving, climbing, and for the first time in years, I felt something like hope. At 21, I had my associate degree. At 22, I transferred into a university through a scholarship. I still remember reading the acceptance letter in a laundromat, surrounded by strangers and the hum of washing machines, and feeling like the universe was finally giving me a nod. I didn't tell anyone. There was no one to tell. But I smiled to myself, folded the letter, and got back to folding towels. By 24, I had my bachelor's degree in hand. I wore the cap and gown, took a photo by myself with a tripod, and made a promise I'd been carrying quietly for years. This was just the beginning. That same year, I got my first real job, operations assistant at a logistics firm in Portland. I moved cities, got a studio apartment with a lock that clicked into place like a symbol of independence. I bought my own furniture, one piece at a time, watching my space slowly transform into something soft, warm, and mine. I worked late, listened more than I talked, took notes on everything. By 26, I was a team lead. By 27, a manager. I was earning enough to breathe, enough to save, enough to walk into any store and buy something without checking the price tag 3 times. But more than that, I had peace. I had silence. Yes, but this time, it wasn't the suffocating silence of being ignored. It was the silence of not needing anything from anyone. And that, to me, was the beginning of justice. I didn't need to call her. I didn't need to show her who I became, because I knew who I was. I knew what I'd built, and I knew, deep down, that people like her, people who abandon their own children, eventually face the consequences of their choices. I didn't know when or how, but I knew she'd come back eventually. People like her always do. The real question wasn't if she'd need me. It was whether I'd let her in, when she did. I didn't dwell on it, but I stayed ready. I kept old photos in a drawer, not because I missed her, but because I needed the reminder of who I was, of what she gave up. Then, one Thursday morning, 3 weeks after my 29th birthday, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to. I picked up, and when I heard her voice, my whole body froze. "Elena?" she said. It was soft, almost shaky, not the composed, controlled woman I remembered. It's Mom. 12 years. 12 years of silence. And just like that, she was back, asking for help. But this time, I held all the power. What would you do if the mother who abandoned you suddenly called after 12 years of silence? Would you answer? Or let it ring? Tell me in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you're feeling this story. Because trust me, what comes next? You won't want to miss it. Her voice barely sounded like hers. It was softer, slower, with a tremble I didn't recognize. Not the Linda Blake I grew up with. That woman was always sharp, always composed. This voice? It sounded like someone unraveling. "Elena, I know this is unexpected," she said, hesitating, "but I need your help." There was a long pause on the line. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence sit there, heavy and uncomfortable. I knew she hated silence when she wasn't the one controlling it. She cleared her throat. "I wouldn't call if it wasn't serious. 12 years. Not a birthday card. Not a text. Not even a name drop from someone who might have seen her at the grocery store. And now here she was, asking for help?" I wanted to laugh, not out loud. Just the kind of laugh that comes from disbelief, the irony of it all. But I kept my voice level, calm, neutral. "What happened?" I asked. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the entire time. I lost my job last year, and then I got sick. I couldn't keep up with the medical bills. The house is gone. I'm staying with a friend, but it's temporary. And they're leaving town soon. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, one hand gripping my phone, the other tracing the edge of my desk. "Why are you calling me?" I asked quietly. Her voice cracked. Because I didn't know who else to call. There it was. Not an apology. Not, "I miss you." Not, "I'm sorry for what I did." Just desperation. I stayed quiet again, let her sit in it. "Look," she continued, "I know I wasn't the best mother. I know I made mistakes. But I'm trying to make things right." Make things right? That phrase rolled around in my mind like gravel. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. Instead, I offered her something she never gave me. A little room. "Okay," I said, careful not to sound too warm. "Let's meet. We can talk." She sounded surprised. "Really?" "Yes," I said. "Just talk." We agreed on a cafe in Portland. Neutral ground. I picked a place I liked. A place where I felt confident, where I knew the staff and the lighting was kind to me. I dressed simply but sharply. Nothing flashy, just enough to say, "I'm not the girl you sent away." When I walked in, she was already there, and for a moment, she looked like a ghost. Not the elegant woman I remembered. Her hair was thinner, her eyes tired. She wore a coat 2 sizes too big, and her hands fidgeted on the cup in front of her. "Elena," she said, standing halfway, as if unsure if she was allowed to hug me. I nodded, sat down. We didn't hug. She talked. A lot. About the job she lost, the surgery she couldn't afford, the friends who stopped returning her calls, how quickly things fell apart. I listened. Carefully. I gave nothing away. Not my emotions, not my opinions, not even my memories. She was fishing for pity, for familiarity, for some flicker of the old bond. But I kept my waters still. I nodded where appropriate. Asked a few questions, but I didn't offer myself. Because this wasn't about comfort. This was about clarity. She asked if I had a guest room. Said she didn't want to be a burden. Just needed a few weeks, maybe a month, to get back on her feet. That's when I saw it. She still thought I was soft. That the girl she kicked out at 18 would melt the moment she cried. She hadn't changed. She was just out of options. And I was her last one. I sipped my coffee slowly, watching her over the rim of my cup. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was detached. Whatever power she once had over me, whatever grip she used to hold, it was gone. But I didn't show her that. Not yet. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay still while the other person flails. So I smiled, polite, measured. "I'll think about it," I said. The first few days after she moved in were surprisingly quiet. She kept to herself, made small efforts, washing her dishes, offering to help fold laundry, even complimenting the plants I'd carefully kept alive for years. It was all polite, calm, controlled, and I didn't trust a second of it. She'd always been skilled at the performance of motherhood. She knew how to appear warm without ever being truly present. She had perfected the illusion of caring, but I watched her like I used to watch thunderstorms through the window as a child, knowing that eventually the calm would crack. At first, the cracks were small. She began asking oddly specific questions about my work schedule, my income, my savings. She'd frame them like casual curiosity. "How much does your company pay for health insurance?" Or, "Do you get bonuses?" But I knew the rhythm of her manipulation. She never asked a question without already having an angle in mind. Then it shifted. One evening, she mentioned the guest room. "You know," she said, smiling gently over a cup of tea, "we could make this place so much more efficient. I could move into your second bedroom permanently. You'd save on rent. I could help with bills. It would be practical." She said it like it was obvious, like it wasn't a massive ask. I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her, the steam from my tea rising between us like a veil. "I thought this was temporary," I said finally. Her smile twitched, just a flicker. "Well, things change. We're reconnecting. It feels natural, doesn't it?" No, it felt rehearsed, planned. That weekend, I started noticing small things out of place. A drawer slightly ajar, A notebook in my office turned to a page I hadn't left open. My work bag unzipped when I swore I'd closed it. I started locking my door when I wasn't home. Then the real twist came. On a Tuesday afternoon, I got a call from my property manager. "Hi, Elena," he said. "Just following up on the lease update you requested. About adding your mother as a co-signer?" I stopped walking. "I didn't request that." A pause. "Oh, she said she had your approval. I'm so sorry. We'll disregard it immediately." I ended the call and stood frozen on the sidewalk, heart pounding. The sounds of the city blurred around me. Car horns, distant sirens, people talking. She had tried to attach herself legally to my lease. She wanted access to my space, my security, my life. When I got home, she was in the kitchen again, making something overly complicated, like she always did when she wanted to create the illusion of domestic harmony. She turned around, holding a wooden spoon. "I'm making that lentil stew you used to like." I stared at her. "You tried to add yourself to my lease," I said flatly. She blinked, eyes wide with forced innocence. "What?" "I just thought, if I'm staying here, it might make sense to—" "No, you didn't ask. You acted. That's not how this works." She set the spoon down slowly, carefully. "Elena, I've been trying to show you I've changed. I'm trying to be part of your life, but you're not," I said calmly. "You're trying to own a piece of it." The silence that followed was thick, charged. For a moment, her mask slipped. Just for a second. Her mouth tightened. Her eyes narrowed. That same expression from years ago. The one I remembered so well. The one she wore when she gave up on loving me. But this time, I wasn't 18. I wasn't begging. And I wasn't scared. I walked past her, into my room, and closed the door. I sat on the edge of my bed, heart steady, hands folded, spine straight. She hadn't changed. She'd just learned how to hide her claws better. But now I saw her clearly. This wasn't about reconciliation. This was about survival. Hers. At my expense. She hadn't returned to reconnect. She'd returned to reclaim what she thought she was entitled to. My success. My safety. My life. But I had spent too long building myself from scratch to hand it over now. She may have created me, but she would never own me. I didn't confront her immediately. I didn't raise my voice or slam a door. I didn't say the words I had rehearsed in my head for years. I didn't need to. I had already won. The moment she tried to add herself to my lease without my permission, something inside me settled. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even betrayal. Not this time. It was clarity. She hadn't changed. Not really. Her tactics had softened, but the intention was the same. To take. To control. To mold the space around her into something convenient. But this time, she had miscalculated. Because this time, I had boundaries. I didn't throw her out right away. That would have made it seem like she still had the power to disrupt me. Instead, I did what she had done to me for so many years. I detached. I became quiet, precise, emotionally unavailable. I made polite conversation but stopped sharing anything meaningful. I no longer talked about work, plans, or even what I was cooking for dinner. I let her exist in my space without access to my life, and she noticed. At first, she responded the way she always did, with charm. She baked, she cleaned, she offered compliments I didn't ask for. "This place is so warm. You've done such a beautiful job with it. You've grown into such a graceful woman. I'm so proud of you." Words that might have meant something when I was 15. Now? They felt like sugarcoating over a rusted knife. I thanked her with a smile, then walked away. 3 days later, she left a note on my desk, folded neatly, like a peace offering from a war she didn't want to admit she started. I know I made mistakes. I didn't know how to be a good mother, but I'm here now. Please let me stay. Let me make this right. No apology. No acknowledgement of the harm. Just a vague, self-serving request for access to the life she abandoned. I didn't write back. Instead, I contacted my attorney. I asked him to draft a short, clear document. A guest termination notice. 2 weeks to vacate the premises. No negotiation. No emotional loopholes. I printed it, signed it, and slid it under her door the next morning. When I got home that evening, she was waiting in the living room. the paper in her hand, her expression blank. "You're serious?" she asked. "I'm always serious," I said, "especially when it comes to my piece." She took a step forward. "I thought we were rebuilding something. I thought this was a second chance." I held her gaze, calm, controlled. "This wasn't a second chance," I replied. "This was a test, and you failed." Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She looked at me like I was a stranger, and in some ways, I was. I wasn't the 18-year-old girl she discarded without a second thought. I was a woman now, one who had built herself from nothing, one who knew the cost of letting people stay past their expiration. Her eyes welled up. "You're being cruel." "No," I said quietly. "I'm being clear. There's a difference." She tried again, said she had nowhere to go, that she needed more time, that I was her only family, and I let her speak. I gave her that. Then I walked away. For the next 2 weeks, we lived in a careful silence. She cooked, cleaned, tried to shrink herself in my home like a shadow. But I didn't budge. I didn't soften. She left on a Monday, didn't say goodbye, didn't leave a note, just packed her bags and slipped out before sunrise. I stood by the window, watching her walk down the street, coat fluttering in the wind. And I didn't feel guilt. I felt closure, not the kind that comes from apologies or hugs or teary-eyed reunions. No, that's fantasy. This was real. This was the kind of closure you earn through silence, through boundaries, through choosing yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. She taught me detachment. I just mastered it. And now, I was free. The first morning after she left, I woke up early, not because I had to, but because my body had grown used to being on alert, hyper-aware, braced for tension. But the apartment was quiet, not the tense, brittle silence that used to fill the air when she was here. This was different. It was clean, open, safe. I walked barefoot into the kitchen, made coffee, and sat by the window with both hands wrapped around the mug. The light was soft, the kind that makes you feel like the world is letting you rest for a moment. And for the first time in years, I let myself exhale. Fully. She was gone. Not just from the apartment, but from the part of me that used to ache for her approval, for her presence, for the fantasy of a mother I never had. In those 2 weeks, I hadn't just enforced a boundary. I'd reclaimed a part of myself I didn't even know I'd lost, the part that had always been waiting for her to return. And now, that part was silent. I didn't miss her. I missed the idea of her, the possibility. The version I used to dream of when I was a little girl watching other mothers hold their daughters' hands at the store, or laugh with them in line at the movies. But I had let that idea go the moment she walked out with her bags. Still, the aftermath was real. A few days after she left, I got a call from a mutual acquaintance, someone from my old hometown. Apparently, she was staying with a friend in a motel just outside of town. Word was she was struggling to find stable housing. Some people were concerned. "She mentioned you," the woman said. "Said you had turned her away." There was a pause on the line. I knew what she wasn't saying out loud. They were judging me, but I didn't care. Because I knew something they didn't. Linda Blake had made her choices. Over and over. And when she reached out, it wasn't out of love. It was out of need. Out of desperation. There's a difference between helping someone who wants to heal and enabling someone who refuses to acknowledge the damage they caused. She never said she was sorry. Not really. She never asked how I survived. Never once said, "Tell me what it was like when I left you." She just asked for a bed, a second chance, a shortcut back into my life, and I gave her nothing she didn't earn. Still, some part of me mourned the finality of it all, because no matter how strong you become, there's still a sting in the realization that someone who was supposed to love you simply didn't know how, or never wanted to learn. I grieved that. Not her, but the version of my life that might have existed if she had chosen differently. I gave myself a full weekend to feel all of it, to cry, to sit with the pain, to light a candle for the little girl I once was, who waited at the window for a mother that never came. And then, I let her go. I burned the last photo we took together. I deleted her number. I cleared the guest room. I opened the windows. And the light poured in, stronger than ever. I went back to my routines. Work, dinner with friends, morning walks with my coffee. I started going to therapy again, this time not because I was broken, but because I wanted to keep growing. And one day, months later, as I was organizing some old papers in a storage box, I found something. A letter I wrote when I was 19, but never sent. It was a list of things I wanted to say to her, things I never had the chance or the courage to say. I read it with steady hands, and then I laughed, because none of it mattered anymore. She had lost the right to hear my pain, and I had gained something she could never take away again, myself, fully. 6 months passed. It was quiet, peaceful. My life had finally found a rhythm that didn't include her name in my thoughts. My apartment was just mine again, clean, still, and calm. I had redecorated the guest room, turned it into an office. My career was steady. I had friends who knew me, truly knew me. I traveled. I smiled more. And most importantly, I felt safe. I hadn't heard from her since the day she left. No calls, no letters, no desperate last attempts. Just silence. It was exactly what I wanted, until the day that silence broke. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I'd just finished a meeting and decided to grab groceries on the way home. I was walking out of the market with a bag of lemons and a bottle of red wine when I saw her. At first, I thought I was imagining it. She looked thinner. Her hair was tied back loosely, and she wore the same tan coat from that last day. She was standing at the edge of the sidewalk, almost hiding behind the corner of the building. "Elena?" she called out. I stopped. Her voice hadn't changed. It was still soft, composed, but this time there was something behind it, something fragile. We stood there for a long moment, the noise of the city moving around us like background static. "I didn't know if I should approach," she said, walking slowly toward me, "but I've been meaning to find you, just to talk." I didn't respond right away. I didn't know what to say. I didn't feel anger, not even anxiety, just curiosity. So I nodded. We walked to a nearby bench outside a small bakery. She asked if I had time. I said, "Only a few minutes." She didn't try to waste them. "I wanted to say something I didn't have the courage to say before," she began, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I was wrong. About everything. And not just about what I did when you were 18, but the way I treated you long before that." I stayed quiet. She continued, "I told myself I was being strong, that I was preparing you for the real world. But the truth is, I was pushing you away because I didn't know how to love you, and I regret it. Every day, I studied her face. It was tired, not just from age, but from guilt, or at least from living in the ruins she'd created. "I'm not asking to come back into your life," she said. "I know I lost that right. I just needed to tell you that I see now. I see what I did, and I'm sorry." For a long moment, I said nothing. I let the silence sit there between us. Then I nodded, slowly. "Thank you," I said. She blinked. "That's all?" "That's everything," I replied. "I don't need you to fix anything. I've already done that. But hearing that, it helps." She looked down, as if unsure whether to feel relieved or ashamed. "I won't bother you again," she said quietly. I smiled gently. "You're not bothering me. You're just someone I used to know." She exhaled slowly. There was sadness in her eyes, but also acceptance. We stood. She offered a weak smile, then turned and walked down the street. I didn't watch her go. Instead, I looked up at the sky. It was pale blue, calm, still, just like me. That conversation wasn't closure. I didn't need closure. It was confirmation. Confirmation that I was right to protect my peace, right to set boundaries, right to choose myself. Some people might say I should have let her back in. That forgiveness means reconnection. But I disagree. Sometimes, forgiveness is quiet. It's a boundary, not a bridge. It's letting go of the weight without inviting it back into your home. She apologized. I accepted it. But I didn't forget who I became because of her absence. I became strong, resilient, whole, not because she returned, but because she left. Looking back now, it's strange to realize how much space one person can take up in your story, even when they're gone. For years, my life was shaped by the absence of a mother's love, by the questions that were never answered, by the silence that echoed louder than words. But what I've learned is this: You don't need someone to come back and make it right in order for you to heal. You can heal quietly, slowly, through your own effort, through your own victories, through the life you build in the ruins they left behind. I used to wonder what kind of woman I'd be if my mother had loved me differently. Now, I don't wonder anymore, because I love the woman I became anyway, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. And if you're listening to this, if any part of you has felt the sting of being unwanted, overlooked, or underestimated, I want you to hear this. You are not what they did to you. You are who you choose to become in the aftermath. I became strength. I became stillness. I became the kind of woman who doesn't beg to be chosen because she already chose herself. So no, I didn't get the mother I deserved. But I became the daughter she never had the capacity to raise. And that, in the end, is more than enough. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to let go of someone who was supposed to love you? Did it make you stronger? Or did it leave a scar that never fully healed? Tell me in the comments. And if this story spoke to you, even a little bit, leave a like. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe, because I have more stories to tell. And maybe one of them will be yours. Thank you for listening. Until next time.